If you're a leader of a membership organization and you're considering whether or not you should build custom software for your business or you should just buy something off the shelf, today I'm going to give you clarity on which one makes sense for your situation. And if you do decide to build, what framework and next steps you should take to ensure that you build something that's profitable for your business, as well as decreasing time spent for each one of your employees on things like manual tasks, like we did for our customer single action shooter society. And we'll review the case study on how we're able to achieve certain results, like getting their team back 30% of time each day, 18 days after launching, and also allowing them to be able to pull reports that used to take 8 to 10 hours now take 15 minutes. I'll break all that down for you and give you the same type of roadmap and framework that you can use for your business in this video. I'm Jake Haynes. I'm the co-founder of Pilot West Studios out of Nashville, Tennessee. Pilot West Studios is one of the leading software development companies that rebuilds software for other businesses. And we have a unique way of building software that focuses on specifically reducing manual tasks and inefficiencies in your business through code, to where on average our customer saves between 1 to 3 hours per employee per day when we do rebuild or modernize our customer software. Now, yes, our talent is great. Usually our average developer has 10 to 20 years of experience, but we're able to achieve those results more specifically because we are able to focus on the right things when we work with our clients, meaning we focus on business results. And that actually leads me to my first point today on, if you're considering building custom software for your membership organization, do not focus so much on what you're trying to rebuild. Oftentimes when I have these introductory conversations, it's more about, we're trying to replace this piece of software. But instead, you need to know what you know and understand that instead of trying to speak the language of a developer, you should still focus on what you know best, which is your membership organization. So instead of it being about what, define why we're doing this. Why are we wanting to rebuild? Because we can focus on the problem, then we can expand it to understand the big picture of what we're actually trying to solve here. If you cannot do that, and it's just, we want to rebuild this piece of software, we want to have something truly tailored to our business, or we want to stop paying an annual fee, then it's not going to be worth it to you to actually build custom software. Because at the end of the day, if you do decide to build it and you're spending, upper 5 figures or potentially multiple 6 figures, there's not going to be enough return on investment on the back end to completely justify this. So again, number one, start with the problem. Where's the bottleneck? What's going on? Don't focus on what you're trying to rebuild. Focus on what's the result that we're trying to build for through custom software. If you feel like you're not able to articulate that, then you're either too early or it's not right for you. Now, if you're able to articulate that, the second step would be, in what we focus on with our clients, is not only articulating what's the bottleneck, what's the problem, what's the business result that we're trying to solve for, but then we reverse engineer the problem. So we say, okay, here's the problem. What is the cost of this problem within our organization? Meaning, if there's a ton of manual entry from software to software, which is really common if you have, 10, 15 different tools that you're using to manage your membership organization, look at your employees and define how much is that costing you. When your employees are taking the same membership information and putting into the billing system, then putting into the membership organization system, then putting it into all these different systems, that takes time, right? So if you onboard a new client, a new customer, that might be 15 to 20 minutes of something that should take 2 to 3 minutes if data flowed where it should to the right places. So you have to understand, again, not only what are the problems here, what are the bottlenecks, but we have to define specifically what are the costs here. How much is this costing our employees every day? Whether this be reporting, whether this be manual entry, or maybe it has to do with critical legacy data. Maybe things are getting lost and things are dropping through the cracks. Then you want to document those things, document those problems, and document what the net result is to your business. Why? Because that allows us to then be able to take a step back and evaluate, okay, we understand what our problem is and what we're trying to solve for, not just what we're trying to rebuild. We understand what the problem is and how much it's costing us now. So if we're understanding how much it's costing us, we can annualize that, meaning we could take it from a daily basis to bring it out to a bigger basis, like an annual basis, to understand, well, if it's, costing us 15 minutes per customer onboarding, and we do 2 of those a day times 5 days a week times 52 weeks in a year, then you're able to actually look at what is our opportunity cost. Because most membership leaders cannot understand really what can I afford here. And the only way that you can understand what you can afford is, again, understand the problem, understanding how it's costing you, and then annualizing that out to say, okay, well, if we do rebuild the software, we might spend $150,000, $200,000. But if we look at all these line items of how much it's costing us in our inefficient operations, then we can see, well, annualized out, we're spending $300,000 in labor on inefficient processes or lost revenue. See, these are the things that we have to look at first before we really evaluate, building is the right step for you. So again, understand the problem, understand what is the net result, meaning the time or the money that is wasted, annualize that out to understand what is the big picture cost. And then understand that if you do rebuild software, yes, you might spend $150,000, $200,000 at first, but understand that's the fixed cost at the beginning. Where if you're able to look at the annualized cost of your problems right now and look at it not only from an annualized perspective, but then a 5, 10, 15, 20-year perspective, that hopefully if you were to rebuild truly custom software tailored to your business, that it can be an asset to your business for the next 15 or 20 years. So then take that annualized amount and multiply it by 15 years, 10 years to understand what is the big picture. Because, annually you might be losing $50,000 in revenue. And, if you look at that from a year-to-year basis, okay, it doesn't make sense to spend $200,000. But if you look at it from a 5-year basis where that's $250 of lost, or $250,000 of lost revenue, or annualize that out for 10 years, you then get to see the big picture of this is an asset for our business. We understand it's going to cost a lot, but we need to understand over that the life cycle of the asset, just like any other asset, just like a piece of equipment. We want to see how much is that going to make us over the course of 10 to 15 years. So then if you define the problem, you quantify the problem, you annualize the problem, then you take the annualized problem and look at it over a 10 to 15 year life cycle of the software, then you need to look at what the cost would be potentially to rebuild software. And to do it from the ground floor, it could be $150,000 to $250,000. It's hard to say, but just say based off that estimate and comparing it to the 10 to 15 year amount of return that I would get of what I'm losing right now, if you're not looking at a 2 to 5 times return, meaning the money that you put into it, let's say if it's $150,000, you're not looking at least at a $300,000 return over the next 10 years, or probably more like 3 to 5x, then really the opportunity cost is not really worth it. That you should just keep doing what you're doing and optimize for the current situation. But if you look at, the cost of being, let's say $250,000, and you're looking at the annualized return over the next 10 to 15 years, and you go, okay, there's potentially $3 to $5 million over the next 10 years that we'd be missing out on if we don't do something today. Then spending $250,000 to make an additional $3 million is a no-brainer, considering it could give you, 10x what the return would be in theory. And I also wanted to pull this up. This is the blog post of me breaking down the case study for if membership organization leaders want to rebuild software, and kind of going over a little bit more of that in detail, as well as the case study for what we did for Single Action Shooter Society, otherwise known as SASS. And here are some other things you should consider that if you're not able to meet any of those metrics, as I mentioned prior, you shouldn't build. And if there's a few other things I would look for, kind of just on the surface, that if you don't meet these criteria, I would really suggest that you consider waiting on building custom software. And that would be, you should stick with off the shelf if your membership structure is pretty straightforward. With SASS, we had some unique situations for how their operations was run, with members and clubs and events and chapters, as well as they're using an old piece of custom software that was 40 plus years old. So that uniqueness in their business justify the expense for building something custom. Also, if you're under, let's say, $1 to $2 million in revenue as a membership organization, I've rarely found a situation where it makes sense for you to build custom, because it's really going to hit cash flow. Unless you're just sitting on, $250, $500,000 at the end of the fiscal year and you need to get rid of it, and this is something that you all want to do, then okay, that could make sense for you to consider. But for most of you, you're not going to have the net margin or the cash to really justify spending that right now. And let's say your existing platform, if it covers, let's say 80 to 90% of what you do right now, it's just not quite there, then I'd say stick with it and try to optimize either your existing workflow to better make the best use case scenario with your existing software, or look at potentially what's called open APIs, which just means look to see if your software has an API that allows data to flow back and forth to other software, because one, that'll allow you to potentially connect your tech stack, connect the software that you use on a daily basis to where some of that data could flow automatically instead of you having to copy and paste it. And or you could build a smaller piece of custom software with an API that would allow you to get more of that custom feel, to take the software from, let's say, 80 to 90% of what you need, closer to that 100% of what you need, with a little bit more of a custom feel and workflow. In addition, if you don't have really any critical legacy data over the course of decades like SASS did, then, exporting and importing into another software is not going to be that big of a deal. But if you have decades of data and it's configured in a kind of a weird way, then that's going to be a monster in and of itself to get it into the next software. And in addition, if your just budget is extremely tight, where you're not willing to invest potentially 6 figures into building something truly custom for your organization, then it does not make sense for you to consider building custom. Now, if you want to get a full picture into what we did for Single Action Shooter Society and a little bit more detail of some of the things we're talking about today, I'll link in the description below the case study and what I wrote up alongside of it, so you can go really deep into this subject to learn more of how we uniquely built Single Action Shooter Society's custom software to where they're able to save 30% of their time every day, 18 days post-launch, which means that's only improving. And for us to be able to automate things like a report that used to take 8 to 10 hours to compile now takes 15 minutes for them. And we'll break down a little bit more of how we're able to do that so that you can take some of that information and build your own profitable custom software if that's the right decision for your business. So again, we've decided that if you can't define the problem, quantify the problem, analyze the problem, and then compare it to the return on investment and get some kind of 3 to 5x return over the next 10 to 15 years, then it's not the right fit for you. We've also defined some other ways, some other good signals to show you that, okay, maybe it's better for us to wait as a membership organization. And the reason why this is so important and why it seems like you might be confused saying, well, this isn't really what I was expecting. We're not going down technical specifications or languages or anything like that. Exactly. And that's why we do things differently, and we're able to get so much profitability out of the things that we build because we stay hyper focused on what we call our North Star, which is articulating these things on the front end, meaning what's the problem, how much is it costing you, and then we try to reverse engineer something that actually solves a pain instead of just rebuilding a software that a client tells us to do. Because if you can build these metrics, if you can define these metrics, and then whether you hire us or you're hiring someone else, being able to pass over to them, hey, this is what our business needs to look like. This is what our membership organization needs to look like at the end of this software build, really helps a developer understand, what are we building here? What is it that the end result needs to look like, so they can take their technical knowledge and be able to turn that into code that actually saves your business money and makes it more profitable. And lastly, one of the biggest mistakes I see is a membership organization will go talk to some agency or some developer off of Fiverr and saying, hey, we need to rebuild this piece of software. And the developer will say, oh, cool, tell us what features it has. What does it do now? And they're asking, again, the wrong questions. And at the end of that build, unfortunately, you get a crappy piece of software that's rebuilt to let's say a new modern framework or a new language, but it's pretty much what you had prior, and your business looks the exact same. Again, that's when we focus too much on the what and not on the why. And so I hope you can see that there's immense value, in fact, probably the most value that you can get out of considering these questions and determining the return on investment is the best place to start, so that it allows you to know what your business needs to look like and therefore articulate a solution that will actually impact your business. So again, go and calculate your numbers. And if you're not able to hit a 2 to 5x return over the course of 10 to 15 years of your software investment, then it's really not a good fit for you. And check out some of the things that I mentioned in the blog post that I'll link below on some other things you should consider on whether or not it's a good fit for you and how you should manage the project if you decide to do so. If you still feel like you need some clarity, feel free to email me, or you can book a free 60-minute consultation where there's no sales pitch. We'll just overlook what you're looking to do and suggest some either fixes or tell you honestly, hey, this makes sense to build or it doesn't make sense. And we'll give you clarity on the right next steps that you should take for your unique situation. I'm Jake Haynes. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, have a great day.